Yo, what's good, y'all? What is going on? We back with another one. I got another video for y'all, man. The story of Larry Davis, a gangster who shot 6 police officers and escaped, bro. Yo, y'all already know this gonna be a crazy story. So let's get right into it. We ain't even gonna waste no time. You know how we get down.
5 feet 8 and 165 pounds. He used to have a mustache, but he is now clean-shaven with close cropped hair.
Is known to be armed with a shotgun, 45 automatic, 357 Magnum, small caliber handgun, and an Uzi submachine gun.
I'm here because of what happened in the police case, and they don't like the fact that I exposed them the way I did.
Larry Davis kept it gangster, man.
Back in the days of the crack epidemic in the Bronx, the streets were a chaotic place, and even the cops had their hands deep in the drug trade. They weren't shy about pulling in young kids from the neighborhood to sell hard drugs, and that's how Larry got caught up in the mix. He was just a boy, easy to manipulate like any boy his age, and the cops took full advantage of that.
You know, this is why I say Larry is a metaphor for a genocidal war against black people in America.
Before long, though, Larry stumbled upon a dangerous secret, and that made him rethink his involvement. He tried to step away from the shady deals with the police, but things didn't exactly go as planned. Walking away only made his situation worse. He found himself in deeper trouble that would completely flip his life upside down.
Hold up, y'all. My bad. Forgot to do something. Lord Jesus, please protect us while we watch these things. Protect our minds, our eyes, our ears. Please, me and everybody watching, Lord, help us to get through this. Help us to not let these things take over our soul. In your name I pray, Jesus. Amen.
He just started shooting. I couldn't see the man to get a shot at him. I just kept firing to keep him away from me, and I imagine that's what everybody else would do, just to keep him back.
People used to call Larry Davis the original 50 Cent before 50 Cent even hit the scene. In his neighborhood, he was sometimes called the Robin Hood of the ghetto, known for standing up against corrupt cops and the drug-fueled violence plaguing the streets. Meanwhile, the authorities painted a very different picture of him, labeling him the Crack City Terminator. To folks in the Bronx, though, Larry wasn't just a criminal. He was seen as someone who had the guts to fight back against the epidemic of police brutality, something that felt like an everyday reality for many. His solution to the chaos was extreme, but to some, it was the only way to push back against a system that had long been out of control. Larry's name really hit the national spotlight in 1986 when a shootout with police turned him into a notorious figure. It all started when the cops tried to arrest him, supposedly for the murder of multiple drug dealers. But according to Larry, it wasn't just about that. He claimed he had dirt on the cops themselves, exposing their own involvement in the drug game, and they wanted to silence him before he could reveal too much.
Joe had a method of recruiting people. He used to come around and shake down a lot of the young people in the area, and he would have all types of different pictures, and he would say, well, you know, as you see, we have pictures of you, and, you know, all we want you to do is, you know, you can make a little money just coming and standing in line up because, you know, we have a walking around.
I'm here because of what happened in the police case, and they don't like the fact that I exposed them the way I did.
What followed was a wild sequence of events that made Larry infamous. On that fateful day, Davis, who was only 24 at the time, engaged in a gun battle with the NYPD in the Bronx, injuring 6 officers in the process.
He just started shooting. I couldn't see the man to get a shot at him. I just kept firing to keep him away from me, and I imagine that's what everybody else would do, just to keep him back.
After the shootout, Larry somehow managed to slip away and went on the run, evading one of the largest manhunts in the country for 17 days. The scene that night, November 19th, 1980.
This man was the original gingerbread man. Catch me if you can. Yo. Yo, that's crazy. So far, it's wild. See, I was too young to know about this coming up, so I didn't hear these stories about Larry. I heard people mention his name, but I never knew his stories. I never had like an OG really break it down for me. You know what I mean? And like my uncles, they only really knew about stuff that was going on in Queens. So yeah, this is crazy, bro.
6 was intense. At exactly 8:26 p.m., 6 police officers, 4 of them detectives, closed in on a 19th-century brick apartment building at 1231 Fulton Avenue in the Morrisania section of the Bronx. They weren't taking any chances. Another 6 officers were stationed around the building's courtyard, fire escapes, and alleyways, while 15 more police units were nearby in case things went sideways. The building's intercom was busted, but a tenant noticed the swarm of officers outside and buzzed them in. Little did they know, they were about to be part of a showdown that would capture the attention of the whole country.
They were in a big hurry, and they got there and they were running when they got out of the cars. And they literally ran in. And as they ran in, they were loading the shotguns and loading the rifles.
That year, New York City was already grappling with a violent crime wave fueled by the crack epidemic. 5 triple homicides and 2 quadruple homicides had already been logged, with police linking all 7 cases, 23 in total, to the booming drug trade. The rise of crack had turned the city's streets into battlegrounds, and the cops were desperate to crack down on anyone connected to the violence. Their target that night, Larry Davis, a stocky 20-year-old black man who, with his intimidating physique and fierce stare, had earned the nickname "a little package of Mr. T" from the police. On the streets, though, he was also known as Loco Larry, a reflection of his unpredictable and often erratic behavior.
Larry Davis is described as black, 5 feet 8 and 165 pounds. He used to have a mustache, but he is now clean-shaven with close-cropped hair.
Davis was wanted for questioning in a string of involving drug dealers, all happening within the same year. On August 5th, Raymond Vizcaino was shot through the door of his Bronx apartment. Then, on September 16th, Victor Lagambra was gunned down on West 156th Street. The bloodshed escalated in late October when 4 men, Angel Castro, Juan Rodriguez, Jesus Perez, and Hector Figueroa Hernandez, were brutally in an apartment on Southern Boulevard. With the city drowning in violence, the police were under intense pressure to find and bring Larry in, believing he held the key to unraveling some of these horrific crimes. For about a month before the shootout, Larry had been laying low, staying with his sister Regina Lewis and her family at their apartment on Fulton Avenue. It seemed like he had nowhere left to run. But that night, when the cops came knocking, Larry wasn't about to go down quietly. It was like Larry Davis could feel disaster creeping closer, and to cope, he turned to drugs and slept on the couch with a gun always within reach. He had been living on the edge for a while, and that constant fear of
Yo, you ever seen The Professional? He used to do that, bro. Sleep on the couch with his shades on and his gun. That's what that reminded me of when they said that he was asleep with his gun. That's wild, bro. I would never want to live a life that was that wild that I needed to sleep like that, bro. Like, that's crazy, man.
Something terrible happening weighed heavily on him, but on this particular night, no amount of drugs or even the presence of his newborn daughter, Larima, could ease the growing anxiety. He knew the police were circling, asking questions about several gangland-style and the walls seemed to be closing in on him. In the hallway of the apartment building, things started to build up. Larry pulled his revolver from his waistband, pressed it against his cheekbone, and then in a strange moment of despair, he slumped against the wall, spitting up. His sister Regina thought he was overdosing, panicked, and along with her husband Joseph, managed to talk him down and take the gun from his hands. It was a small victory in what would become an explosive situation just hours later. Larry wasn't always this out of control. There was a time when he had other interests, like play.
Clearly wasn't his time, y'all. Clearly wasn't his time. Because what are the odds of him spitting up and doing all of that at that moment when he had a gun pressed to his cheek? He was about to off himself. That was God's intervention. I know some of y'all gonna say, here he go again preaching. But listen, bro. Listen, God saved him for a reason.
The piano, and he'd even recorded a track once, but somewhere along the way, he realized that his real knack was for navigating the dark underworld of crime. He had a way of ignoring any so-called street code and saw drug dealers as easy targets. They were sitting on piles of cash, but they couldn't exactly call the cops if they got robbed. So Larry made a habit of hitting drug spots, and to protect himself from retaliation, he amassed a small arsenal of weapons and developed a heavy drug habit. Even his nephew, Brian, had been roped into a few of those robberies.
So basically, he was Omar from The Wire, bro. Y'all ain't seen Omar from The Wire. Y'all already know that dude was a menace. Used to run around whistling with the shotgun and the trench coat. He was robbing all of the drug dealers, bro. When you heard that the drug dealers was literally on the corner. Boys would be like, yo, Omar's coming, and they would scatter like roaches, bro. That's what he was. Okay. Rest in peace, Michael Williams too, man. He played that character very well. That was the start of his career too.
But he eventually bailed when Larry's behavior became too unpredictable. The breaking point for Brian came after a horrifying incident where he claimed Larry tortured and killed a chihuahua, then cooked it in a skillet. This was far from the calm piano-playing side of Larry. This was a man spiraling into madness. After the tense moment in the hallway, Larry was back inside the apartment, sitting.
What kind of drugs was he on? Cause that ain't no regular stuff. That if y'all seen that video with Big Lurch, that sound like some PCP type activities. You know what I'm saying? Spiritual warfare.
Couch with his baby daughter and his eldest nephew. The rest of the family, along with his girlfriend Melody Flood, were all there, trying to go about their evening despite the undercurrent of tension. Then came the knock at the door, a sound that Larry immediately recognized as the beginning of something terrible. His heart must have skipped a beat because he knew it was the police, and he was convinced they weren't just there to arrest him. They were there to him.
I had a 9mm. I had it on my side. I spent with the little girl and I hit the floor. Still, I realized I was still there and that I wasn't out, that I actually was still alive. And they apparently thought that he did get a bullseye shot between the eyes.
What followed was absolute chaos. The police didn't wait long before they kicked the door in, forcing Regina to the side.
She was screaming like crazy. The detective ran right in the apartment. There was no way to stop. He just took off. We had to go in.
Meanwhile, Larry sprang into action, grabbing a stashed shotgun and an automatic handgun. He wasn't planning on surrendering. As soon as the cops broke in, Larry opened fire, forcing them to take cover behind a cinderblock wall in the foyer. He wasn't shooting to scare them off. He was aiming to. Within moments, 6 officers had been hit. The most seriously injured was Mary Ellen Buckley, an emergency service officer who took a shot to the face. The impact was so brutal that 5 of her upper and 5 of her lower teeth shot out of her mouth like ejecting pilots from a.
Bro is a menace. Yo, that's wild.
Plane.
One, hitting him with impact into the mouth, and then coming out the back of his neck, and he flew in the air into many of the other cops who was back behind him with weapons.
Another officer, John O'Hara, was struck in the eye with buckshot, feeling the white-hot lead ricocheting between his cornea and retina, leaving him in agonizing pain. The police were in a tight spot, and their only way out was to retreat. Detective Donald O'Sullivan, who had been part of the initial team.
Damn, bro. He backed down the police, son. He made them retreat. One man, by myself, one bed. You ever go night, nigga? Yo, that's crazy.
That stormed the apartment, managed to dodge the barrage of gunfire and make his way up to a 3rd-floor apartment. From there, he called for backup, trying to get a handle on the chaos that was unfolding below in apartment 1A. Over the police radio, the frantic messages painted a clear picture of the nightmare situation they were in.
He just started shooting. I couldn't see the man to get a shot at him. I just kept firing to keep him away from me, and I imagine that's what everybody else would do, just to keep him back.
Around 8 p.m., one officer's voice crackled through the radio, warning his colleagues, "Use caution, he's crazy." Then, just before 9 o'clock, another voice came through in a panic. "He fired on us. I dove for my." The chaos continued, and by 9:52 another message came in. "There's a Scorpio unit on the roof. They advised they had seen a man wearing army fatigues and light pants in the parking lot of a 15-story building between 168 and 169. Meanwhile, Larry Davis was slipping away right under their noses. During the shootout, the lock on the apartment next door had been shot off. Seizing the opportunity, Davis slipped into the vacant hallway, found the open apartment, and made his escape through a window. He dropped 10 feet into the rear courtyard, vaulted over a brick wall, and disappeared into an alley. All of this happened while a police helicopter's searchlights scanned the area. But somehow, he avoided detection. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, Larry managed to escape, still armed and dangerous dangerous, with enough ammunition to take down more officers if it came to that, while the police scrambled to contain the situation. 2 of the injured officers were rushed to Bronx Lebanon Hospital, one of them so badly hurt he had to be carried across the street. Another officer, despite being injured, walked to the hospital himself, leaving a trail of blood behind him. A 4th officer was taken to Lincoln Hospital, and 2 others were sent to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan. The scene was nothing short of catastrophic. This might be the worst shootout in the department's history, admitted Robert J. Johnston, the chief of police, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The manhunt for Larry Davis was relentless. Police cruisers as far as Albany had his picture taped to their visors, Illinois state troopers were briefed on his description at the start of every shift, and officers in Baltimore received daily updates. In New York City, a $25,000 reward was put up for any information leading to his capture. Despite this massive search effort, Larry had seemingly vanished without a trace.
Armed with a shotgun, 45 automatic, 357 Magnum, small caliber handgun, and an Uzi submachine gun.
Yet while no one knew exactly where he was, his reputation loomed larger than ever. Everyone knew Larry Davis's name now, whether they saw him as a hero, a villain, or something in between. 5 days after the police shootout on November 24th, Davis himself called WABC TV 3 times, asking for reporter John Johnson from Eyewitness News. His last call was recorded, and his girlfriend Melody Flood, who he shared a daughter with, confirmed it was his voice on the line. During the call, Davis made it clear that he wasn't planning to surrender peacefully. "It's going to be dead or alive," he said, "and it's not going to be alive. They'll have to take me out through the morgue. Right now I'm unstable. I don't know what I want to do. Everybody's looking for me. The first sight they see of me, they're going to kill me. They'll never find me. I'm hiding out." The police tip line was blowing up with nearly 1,000 calls every day, sometimes hitting 100 calls an hour during daylight. Over the 6 days following the shootout, police launched 6 strategic raids, each one bigger than the last. But every time, Davis managed to slip away, almost like a shadow that vanished in the blink of an eye.
First time I seen Larry was on the news, you know what I'm saying? Every station, every channel, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 7 o'clock.
"He's like a cockroach," one police official remarked, frustrated by Davis's ability to keep escaping. "Every time you put your foot down, he sneaks away somewhere else." Even Mayor Ed Koch weighed in, urging Davis to turn himself in. Speaking at a church gathering in Harlem, Koch said Davis should surrender to a priest or minister to ensure his safety. He also assured the public, "I expect every police officer, no matter how angry, to act in a professional way and not..."
The smartest thing to tell him to do, but it was also low-key kind of gangster. That was a threat. Turn yourself into a pastor or a priest, man, because if you don't, you already know what's about to happen. These boys about to go crazy on you.
Not engage in vigilante justice. It had been 17 long days since the whole ordeal began, and finally, it felt like there was a hint of progress. Davis, understandably on edge, wanted solid assurance that the heavily armed NYPD officers outside the surrender point wouldn't act out of anger, especially with their colleagues injured. Now under the watchful eyes of FBI agents, Gallagher assured him that as long as he followed the instructions to the letter, he'd make it out alive. All he had to do was hand the shotgun to Sophia and come out with his hands raised. To further ease the tension and build some trust, the negotiators even allowed Melody to speak to him directly, which seemed to help calm things down. By 6:50 a.m., at Davis's request, 3 reporters were escorted up to the 13th floor, where everything was happening. He wanted neutral witnesses, people who weren't connected to the NYPD. So the reporters handed over their press passes, along with IDs from 2 FBI agents Davis knew were present. These were carefully slid under the door to where Davis and the others were holed up. Everyone was in position, and everything seemed set for the tense standoff to come to an end. Finally, at 7:20 a.m., Davis made his move. He handed his .45 cal automatic pistol to Sophia, who was already on the phone with Gallagher. She let him know that Davis was ready to surrender. For a moment, there was complete silence. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Then, unexpectedly, Sophia stopped talking. Apparently, she had put the phone down to tend to her baby, who had started crying and, in that moment, took priority over everything else, even the police. After about 5 minutes, the surrender process resumed, and without any further complications, Davis was taken into custody without a single shot fired. The whole ordeal came to a quiet end. Fast forward to March 1991, Davis found himself standing in court where a Bronx State Supreme Court jury found him guilty of 2 counts of and 1 count of attempted robbery. The verdict came swiftly after just 1 day of deliberations. According to Stephen Reed, a spokesman for the Bronx District Attorney, this conviction stemmed from the 1986 of Ramon Vizcaino, an alleged drug dealer during an attempted robbery at his home in Bronx. While no comment was immediately available from Davis or his defense team, Reed called the decision a significant milestone, the first major conviction against Davis. This trial was a huge victory for the prosecution, particularly given that previous attempts to convict Davis on charges had failed in 3 separate trials. Before this, the only conviction they managed to secure was for illegal weapons possession, which had
So not only was he a menace on the streets, but he was a menace in the courtroom. Dude was just getting away with murder, literally.
already landed Davis a 5 to 15-year sentence. Now, with this new conviction, he faced a maximum of 25 years in prison when sentenced by Justice Stephen Barrett. Davis, however, had become something of a folk hero to many in the South Bronx. Some were impressed by his uncanny ability to win acquittals and saw him as a symbol of resistance, especially against what they believed were corrupt police practices. His defense lawyers had long argued that Davis was being targeted because he knew too much about police corruption. In 2 separate trials in 1988, Davis had been acquitted on charges of attempted
Not to keep interrupting y'all, but on some real stuff, anybody who knows about like the 80s, the police force was very, very corrupt in NYPD was like one of the worst at that time. There's several movies about their corruption. Of course, they was trying to get him. If he had that kind of information,
related to a 1986 shootout between him and several police officers. His lawyer at the time, the famed William Kunstler, successfully argued that Davis had acted in self-defense after police stormed his sister's apartment. These acquittals sparked a lot of controversy, with even former Mayor Edward Koch expressing his disbelief, stating that every police officer in New York, regardless of race, would be horrified by the verdicts. Yet, Davis gained many supporters, especially from communities who had long felt mistreated by the police and saw his battles as part of a bigger fight against police brutality. Davis had faced other legal battles as well. In 1989, he was acquitted in a separate case involving the of 4 alleged drug dealers. But now, in this most recent trial, prosecutors presented a different story. They claimed that on August 5th, 1986, Davis, along with his brother Eddie, had rung the doorbell at Vizcaino's apartment intending to rob him. When Vizcaino refused to open the door, the brothers fired their guns into the apartment him. Eddie Davis had already been convicted in connection with the leaving Davis to face the consequences of this latest verdict on his own. Anyway, let's give you some background for our notorious guy. Larry Davis was born on May 28, 1966 in Newberry, South Carolina, to Mary and Larry Davis Sr. He was the youngest of 13 kids, though some reports claim it was 19. Their first home in the Bronx was just a couple of blocks from Yankee Stadium on Woody Crest Avenue. When Davis turned 10, his dad walked out, leaving the family to fend for themselves. Davis quickly learned to navigate the streets from the neighborhood tough guys.
Oh, that's it. That's why he got caught in the streets. That's the answer right there, bro. Fathers, y'all gotta stay around, bro. Especially when it's that many siblings. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And that mother can't do it. So one of her boys gotta step up and be a man. And that's what ends up happening. That's how they become a victim to the streets.
Who carved out their own futures through force and street smarts.
Growing kid, I stayed into hobbies. Like my best hobby I used to work with motorsport and build motorcycles. I used to build motorcycles and stuff like that.
By the time of the infamous shootout, Davis already had a notorious reputation in the Bronx. He was known for being bold with no boundaries when it came to crime. From robbing drivers stopped at red lights to breaking into homes on Long Island, Davis made his mark. His biggest target, though, was drug dealers. Rumor had it he went after them to get revenge for one of his sisters who had gotten hooked on drugs.
So that was it. That's why I believe that story too. I'm gonna do some more research though. Y'all know how I do, man. I want to read up on this story. I want to hear all the ins and outs of it because I don't You know me, man. I like to know everything that's going on. So, but that makes sense. His sister got hooked on drugs. He got upset with them for doing that and was like, nope. And it's so funny. I think that was the same story for Omar. Was it his brother or something? I think I forgot because I haven't watched The Wire in a minute. Anybody who know the story of Omar on The Wire, leave a comment down below. But I know it was somebody in his family that got hooked on drugs. So I'm really wondering if his story was loosely based off of this character. This person, his character was loosely based off of Larry Davis. I'm about to say off of this character, like it's a movie. It was like a movie though. But anyway, y'all tell me, y'all go down in the comment section below. Let me know what y'all think about this one. This is a crazy story, bro. And shout out to Hood, what's the channel? Hood Chronicles. I watch a lot of the content over there. I've been subscribed for a little minute, so y'all go over there and y'all subscribe too, man. Yeah, I'm out. That's all I got. Peace.